Hi, welcome. On this video, I'd like to discuss the issue of influence. In fact, this is where looking at actually the process of training itself, where I make the distinction between defining influence properly as what promotes change relationally through the methodology with how influence takes hold, through the type of methods that come together, which I define as, well, I say they use the word script. It's how the language of the method is speaking through various interactions to change the perceptions of the dog. Okay. Now, when you look at people will frame up influence in terms of some approaches with how they define influence as a correction. Okay, there is a distinction there in terms of the proactive or reactive nature of the type of influence and how it works or defines change with influencing or even advocating the process itself through what's really happening. And this is again where I show that the process, once people are experiencing behavior issues with their dogs, they're not in right relationship. Okay, the perceptions of the dog have changed at that level relationally, and these issues of control have already begun to manifest. Okay, this is what behavior issues represent. Is in terms of the dog's state of mind, is these issues of the motives of the dog. Again, I talk about motives have gone sideways, and it's starting to influence how the dog thinks, their decision-making process. But getting to the point of understanding, defining physical force, even, you hear a lot of trainers talk about, and even those who advocate training as a learning-based exercise, these people who try to frame up physical force, and what they're doing is they're misrepresenting it. They take certain tools out of context, certain interactions out of context, because to understand what that even means is to understand that, again, dogs are social relational animals. It's to define it relationally, in and through the person. So you're more than an interaction, okay? Dogs connect with us at that level. So, but getting to the point of, of why there's issues with even balanced training in terms of how influence, comes online, so to speak, at a certain point. Okay, when a dog's state of mind is peaking up, is looking at what the process is, but how the type of interpretation they're working off of to start to interrupt that state. It's reactive. Okay, in the sense of, again, of getting a take on what is the process. When you're at a certain point in the relationship, what needs to happen? Well, it's understanding, well, it's a relationship problem. It's about changing the perceptions of the dog. So the mind of the dog is such that that these control issues at the level that they invest. So you see, even if you look at the dog on the leash, you'll see the mind separate in a big way, very quickly. The dog is investing, which means that the mind is kind of going out and wrapping around certain things and already gaining fulfillment through that. But the owner's fading out of the picture. So the whole thing is, when I'm doing this, I'm in tune at a different level. I want people to understand when influence is coming online at a certain point. This is why it's very challenging for people to see how influence is happening, because they're into this thing about a correction and waiting at that way too long, based on how they're defining the process itself. Okay, they're just saying, well, I'm going to correct the dog at this point, and the mind is already exploded. It's gone way beyond. These control issues are manifesting, and so they're correcting the dog, so to speak, or they're bringing influence online. But it's you're behind the eight ball. Okay, you're in a reactive level. The dog's already pegged you. Okay, you're already in a weak position, and so this is why, again, it's important to actually understand the process at the level that it is, at the relational level, to understand, okay, change already needs to happen. How do we move the relationship from point A to point B? Influence itself needs to speak the right language. It's got to come online before that, okay, at the level of just as the level of separation just begins to manifest, you're interrupting at that point. But because you're doing it, because influence takes on a different form in a proactive way, the levels of it are way down. So this is where, again, people can run into problems, because when you're correcting a dog and the dog is already, investing at a high level, the level of challenge goes way up too. This is why you'll see bad things happen. People will get bitten when a dog is really at a really high heightened state of mind, and the challenge levels are going up. And then you try to correct the dog, is how they define it. You interrupt that state, and kaboom, bad things start happening. But here it's understanding, well, it's getting a sense of, okay, no, the dog, the mind is already separating and investing at these levels. I need to be proactive in understanding, it's a relationship problem. And the method itself, how does that work? Really taking a hard look at it to see how it comes together to create change. Okay, that's the important point here. So I want people to understand this system is about going deeper. It's understanding these control issues, but understanding where you're truly at in the relationship, almost like getting a three-dimensional view of it. That's what the system is about, is almost getting a three-dimensional view. So it's not this thing about being reactive, because when you're reactive, you're always behind the curve, so to speak. You're not ahead of the curve. You're trying to react to certain things, okay, based on bad behavior. But it's understanding. This is why, again, the system's intentional with how it brings the dog into that script. Even these random moments, I call them, it's understanding how do you change the perception of the dog. But the same thing can be said, you can apply this to in the human world. When you have a relationship problem with a child, how do you respond to that? You have to get in the kid's airspace, and not in a bad way, in a healthy way. Like, be involved at that level. It's got to be proactive, not reactive. If you're reactive, you're not going to truly, it's like you're playing catch up. So this is the same thing, understanding dogs are the same way. They're social relational animals. So you have to be proactive in that. So I'd encourage anyone that's really trying to get a sense of it, of what the process is, this issue about, because again, this is where I talk about this thing about there's no such thing as balanced dog training. There's nothing balanced about it. You're taking a reactive approach in a situation where a dog is already have a certain level of control, and you're already in a deficit. And so this is why when you start to work within that learning-based parameters of approaching in some sort of middle-of-the-road learning-based exercise, and you incorporate this type of corrective methodology in there, it's oftentimes not enough. Okay, it's not going to get you. It's not going to get you to where you need to go. I want people to understand this is very important. You have to separate from that. Then you got to revisit the method itself to make sure it's coming together in such a way that's going to truly create change, relational change. Because everything, that's what's really happening anyway. I want people to understand, regardless of however you want to define the process, it's a relational changing one. Okay, so dogs are social relational animals, so it's understanding, okay, how does the method itself speak the right language to make sure change is happening. There's a sequence here to follow. So anyway, if you have any questions, check out my website. If you want to try to get an understanding of, of how these things all work, this system is one of a kind. It's designed to make sure change happens, and it does it in a smart way. It's not about being aggressive with dogs or mean to dogs. In fact, how influence manifests, it's done in such a way it's not overly challenging to the dog at all. It makes sense to the dog. The dog comes into agreement with it because of how it's working at that level. So anyway, thanks for watching.